I know there's a really cool new Armageddon box set, but I just can't stop thinking about retro Space Marines. I've got a real thing for them at the moment, and the temptation to do a retro Space Marine army, yeah, is getting pretty strong. So in this video, I'm going to paint an old metal chaplain, and I'm going to see if it's an enjoyable process painting these old metal miniatures. Recently, over on Patreon, I did a two-part video series and I converted a chaplain to represent this old metal one. I was trying to recreate this pose, and my inspiration was, of course, the front cover of the Angels of Death Codex, which I absolutely love. And I also have to give a shout out to Andrew Steele, aka CM Dante. Check out his Instagram if you haven't. And his Golden Demon entry was one of my absolute favorites. You know, when there's one you just want to take home and maybe it didn't win the gold in the category or whatever, but it's just the one you want to keep. This was it for me at Golden Demon in Spiel. And yeah, it inspired me to do a chaplain. And I could have done Lamarte's straight out of the box, but I thought it'd be fun to do a conversion and yeah, just recreate that old retro pose. I basically, when I had this inspiration, I couldn't wait for the one from Armageddon, so I just got on with what I had at home already. I really enjoyed doing this chaplain, and I think it came out pretty cool, and I thought, well, I should probably paint the metal one now to go with it. And I thought, well, I've done this one on Patreon, why not do the metal one over on YouTube, and that could be fun. I wanted to make sure I didn't do the same paint job, so I painted almost everything differently. So I used different colors for the black, different process for the red. I ended up doing the freehand banner, which I thought I was going to wimp out of laziness, but I ended up doing it. So yeah, let's get stuck into it and paint this really cool retro model. When I painted the modern chaplain, I started painting from black primer, and it's super rare that I paint from black primer. I almost always do black and some white over the top or a light grey. In general, I just like painting with pale colours, but I wanted to put the new mini colour reds through their paces over black. I always recommend doing red over a white primer. It won't be too long until you can get a hold of these, I promise. I came to paint the metal one and decided I've done it black, but actually I think I should have done it pale to help out with those bone wings and the skull, and I thought it would reduce the number of layers of paint I needed to use and also help with that kind of retro look. You know, all the colours are really bright and bold, apart from the black, of course, but I wanted all the other colours to be, yeah, kind of retro styling. Whereas the modern one, I wanted to be a little more, you know, dull, a little more atmospheric, and yeah, a bit more grim dark feeling. I wanted this to be retro and just really go for it on that retro experience. And yeah, if you don't have an airbrush, I'm just spraying some Tamiya flat white here. I would recommend a light grey primer such as Mr. Hobby, or you could even use Wraithbone. I think that would be really good. So I started with some Ushabti bone and just blocked in the wings, and I was really glad I went for the light primer here because yeah, this is a really nice color, but it takes a little while to build up, and you can see with one coat it looks pretty good. I did a couple just to make sure, but yeah, doing this light color over white means you can get it done so fast. And of course the black has good coverage and it's going to be easy to block in that black, so I definitely like doing it this way around, no regrets. I then painted the brightest red, and I like to paint the brightest red first over white, and then I can darken it down. And again, this just reduces the layers of paint that I'm going to need as I shade it down, and it means I'm going to get a more vibrant red. If it ends up being too vibrant, I can dull it down so easily, and this is pretty much always how I work, really. Try and get the brightest colors down, and I can dull them back so easily. I'm using Chili here from Mini Color, which is probably my favorite red, but you could use Evil Sun Scarlet from Games Workshop or any bright red you have, no problem here. I think it's more important that you start over white. I then washed the bone parts with some Steel Legion Drab from Citadel. I prefer to water down just normal paints instead of using washes because it's easier to relayer them and get the finish that matches the rest of the paint, and it just dries a little bit differently when you use those washes, so I do prefer this. I'm not sure Steel Legion Drab is a tone I love for the bone colours. I used a different one on the modern one and I definitely prefer that. And that was a lot of what this was about really, was trying some different colours and trying to find nice combinations that I liked. I thought at this point I could start blocking in some black, and I like to block in colours and just try to avoid mistakes really. So before I go ahead and do a really nice job on highlighting the bone or the red, I could make some mistakes with the black, so I think now is a good point to do it. I also think it's worth pointing out that the level I'm trying to get with this paint job is just kind of a fun one. I want it to be kind of the retro look, but I'm probably not going to do edge highlights. I'm going to focus more on my normal style of painting, but just try and keep those retro colors and something like that. But at the moment, I'm really enjoying just doing relaxing painting. Normally, I'm spending hundreds of hours on something for Golden Demon or whatever, but I think something like this is just supposed to be relaxing, and yeah, I encourage you to do some painting like that. I mean, I'm sure you already do already. It's more myself that I have to say, do some relaxing painting. That is what it's supposed to be for. But yeah, there's kind of I don't know, no pressure when it comes to painting these retro models for me. It's really good fun. You can see once the black is blocked in, I think those bone parts are looking pretty nice now. And I'm going to just do a little bit of shading on the red. You could use diluted corn red for this. I again am using a mini color paint. I'm using not a lot of mini color. When they're out and available, I'll use them a lot more. But when it comes to the reds, I really do think these are my favorite. So yeah, I'll mix and match brands always, but I'm always going to go to mini color for reds, I think. Once that shading is done, then I can re-highlight the Ushabti bone. The wash we did of the Steel Legion Drab got into all the recesses, but it also darkened down all of the top surfaces, and so I can just go ahead and highlight now with the Ushabti bone. I've always found picking out these wings quite tricky. They're a little bit rounded, especially on the old metal ones, and it brings back some memories of really struggling with these when I was new to painting, and I've been painting for years now and I still find them quite tricky to get them looking super crisp. So any mistakes I make, I can just sharpen them with Steel Legion Drab. And I'd also recommend highlighting with the Screaming Skull paint from Citadel after this Ushabti bone. I actually don't have any at the moment, I've ran out, but if I had it, I would add that as a highlight as well. I did a kind of lilac purpley black for my modern chaplain, and I thought, what shall I do for this black? And rather than the purple tone, I went for a subtle blue, and I thought I could see a little bit of blue in the retro artwork, and I decided to go for AK here. German grey is a really good first highlight for black. It's just a little bit lighter, and then I used this dark blue grey, and I could add in anything to lighten that, but this would have the right balance of a little bit of a blue tone, but not too much. So I started by doing quite large highlights with German grey, and it's quite hard to see where you're going, so I just kind of roughly get the highlight down, and it dries lighter than when you put it on, and I can tweak it from there, just going in and trimming with some black. But I just want to block out big bands of highlights to start with, and it's so easy to trim them back with black that I'm not too worried how precise they are. I'll just build up all the highlights, get them in the right place, and I can neaten and reduce the size of these if they're a little bit large later on. I then start to add in the dark blue grey, and I probably do a couple mixes of German grey with the dark blue grey before I start using the dark blue grey on its own. And I'm just going to gradually keep adding lighter colours to this black, and I'm going to go pretty light with it because I want it to look a reasonably shiny black. And the first few layers take a little while, but when you start to add the brighter highlights, they're so small and fine, it doesn't take very long at all, even though you're doing quite a lot of layers. It's not too important what you add to dark blue grey to lighten it, just white is okay. I tend to use paints like Ivory, or there's some very pale light blue greys from AK that are good as well. But I think as long as I'm using the dark blue grey, that's going to give me the tone I want, and I just need to lighten it somehow. I personally really enjoy painting black and red, so that's why it was no worries for me to do 2 chaplains and just try out a couple different black recipes really. And these models are just for fun, but it's good to test colors out, and then ones that turn out really well, you can have those in the back of your mind, maybe for other projects that you're taking a bit more seriously or whatever. But I did really enjoy doing the black, and the model is relatively small, so it didn't take me very long at all. And yeah, I quite enjoyed doing this shiny looking black on this this old model, where it probably didn't have this kind of paint job back in the day. Similar, but maybe just focused more on edge highlights. When you finish building up the highlights, you can go as bright as you want. It's down to you how shiny you make it look, how much contrast you like. I go back with some black and I dilute it so it's reasonably watery, and I just glaze in the part where it was going from black to German grey. It was just a bit of a band. It was really easy to see, and I'm not looking for perfect blending here, but just a couple glazes moving towards the black with my brush stroke goes a long way of just diffusing it a little bit. If I wanted to blend it perfectly, I would repeat this glaze over and over again until it was completely blended, but I just did 1 or 2. This is just about having a bit of fun and not being super refined. I think there's a real balance here, and one of my main aims with painting at the moment is honestly not to get bored. And I find sometimes when you're trying to do something perfect because it's going to be judged, it can just get a little bit boring and just frustrating trying to make things perfect, right? Because you get annoyed when it isn't. But this was very relieving, just chilling out and just making it look good, not perfect. I like that a lot. For the gems and, well, any of the red bits, I just added a little bit of some orange into the highlight. So if you have Evil Sun Scarlet, you could add in, some kind of pastel orange, whatever you fancy really, whatever you like the tone of for your red highlights. Now I have these shiny black highlights there, it's easier to make a judgment on how I want the red to look. So it was quite fun pushing these highlights. I think it looked cool. And for the wax seals, I did a different red. So I used the shadow color and just added white to that, which makes it look a little more pink. So you could base coat them in corn red, just add some white to corn red, and you'll get a slightly different tone for those wax seals, which I think looks nice, having that colder red against a really warm orange one we have on like the gems on the chest and everything. Then I finished the chaplain body itself with some really simple metallics, just painting some golds and stuff and some silver for the iron halo, just whatever metallics that you like the look of really. My metallics are looking a bit sorry for themselves and a bit dried up, so I'm going to have to get some new ones soon, I think. Now, I have a confession, and I was going to not do the banner, and the reason is because I couldn't really be bothered. That's the honest truth. I was feeling quite lazy. Maybe it's the heat in the UK right now. But I thought, no, come on, you've got to do it. This is what makes the retro one look cool. And I've made plenty of banners in the past. I've used brass sheet and things like that. But I just tried a very well-known brand can, and I thought, oh yeah, this will be fine. I can just use a bit of this foil, and it'll be really easy to make the banner. But unfortunately, It was quite easy to make the shape with, and it didn't damage my clippers at all. I could just clip out the shape, so that was cool. But it was really difficult to get it perfect. It wasn't quite thick enough. It was moving too much, and I accidentally got a little bit of a ridge in it, and I couldn't smooth it out even with a bit of sanding. And so I thought I'm going to have to add some putty to this to thicken it up. I went into this thinking it was going to be a real pain, but I am happy to say it's much easier than you think. So yeah, there you go. I kind of made myself do something I didn't feel like doing, but I discovered that, yeah, it was actually cool. So I've got that now in my quiver, that making these back banners in this way really, really works. I use Tamiya Quick Type Putty a lot. It's my favorite putty right now. It just works how you expect it to work, I guess. It's quite elastic. It's nice to move around with your tools, your fingers. And yeah, it just behaves how I want putty to behave, where there's other ones, I kind of find them annoying. It's expensive, but I do really recommend it if you want to get into converting. So you can see I really roughly got it onto the banner, did a really bad job. And I'm using my rubber sculpting tool here. I think they're called clay shapers, if you want to search for them. And what you've got to realize with putty is, if it looks really awful when you first put it down, just relax, because as it dries, and the Tamiya Quick Type dries very quickly, it becomes more resistant and it's easier to get the shape you want. So this is when the putty is completely fresh and you have to not get frustrated with it. You'll put it down and, you can see here it's coming away and it's quite hard to deal with. But in 30 minutes time, it will be easier to move. And then in an hour's time, it will be even better. And eventually you run out of working time. But as long as you do a pretty good job of it, you can sand it down and make it perfect. You can see as it got harder over time, I managed to get it pretty smooth with the same tool. And eventually you can switch to using a metal tool because, yeah, the putty will become quite resistant and you can really start to get a good shape. I made sure to focus on the edges because I knew the main surface I could sand to get it perfect. So it was about just getting the shape right, the thickness, and I knew I could adjust it later. I was actually buzzing a little bit from doing this because, I just thought it'd be quite difficult, but it was relatively easy, and I'm surprised with the results. So after it had dried, I thought I'd done quite a good job, and so I just went in with some sandpaper. I started with 400 grit, and I went up to only 600, and that was almost perfectly smooth, to be honest. So you don't have to go crazy polishing these things. I have got really into my God Hand sanding sticks. I like those a lot. But yeah, the 600 are absolutely enough, and I managed to get the surface pretty much perfect, I think. I primed it with Mr. Hobby Grey Primer. Again, you could use Wraithseer, Greyseer, whatever it's called. The Citadel one is fine, but I really recommend the Mr. Hobby primers if you can get those. And I think I maybe should have airbrushed this white as well. I did this separately from when I airbrushed the white for the Chaplain, so I probably should have done it at the same time, and it would have just helped out the yellow. And I thought I'd use the airbrush. You'll notice I haven't used the airbrush for the model at all. I just did the black and white priming. But for getting the yellow down across the banner, I thought, yeah, this is where the airbrush is appropriate. So we're going to try a freehand, and the cool thing about these old school freehands is they're a little bit easier because they don't have to be, I don't know, perfectly realistic or something like that. So I do encourage you to give it a go. It's hard, but you just have to try it, and I think, be prepared to make mistakes and just correct them. There's one thing that's tricky, and that's doing freehand and doing it on on camera in this heat that we have right now was a combination of things I didn't love, to be honest. And I needed to get this model done. I wanted to get this video uploaded and move on to the next project, but Yeah, unfortunately, painting the freehand was quite challenging just with this heat we've got at the moment. When I was trying to do really fine brush marks and correct stuff, the paint was drying on the tip. So I would recommend doing things like this when, yeah, it's a little bit cooler. I think if I was you guys, I would stick to building if you're, yeah, trying to suffer through this heat like me. When I move, I'm getting aircon, and I want to have a new studio to paint in, yeah, with aircon, and then I'll be able to paint during these hotter months. But anyway, you can see I started with a black border, and my memory card ran out, so it kind of, yeah, didn't get the clip for that. But now I'm going in with some pale grey blue or something from Vallejo and just trying to block out the wings first of all. I think all you've got to do with these freehands, because they're not particularly, you know, three-dimensional, they're quite flat, is just block out all the shapes and then you can define them later. I try to be careful, but at the same time just kind of go for it and just get some shapes on there and just see how it looked, and then I knew I could tweak them later, and I just really relieved the pressure from myself, because when I went into this I was thinking, oh, I've got to do this perfect freehand and, you know, it's got to be immaculate. But when I got stuck into it, I kind of let go a little bit and thought, just do a pretty good job. This is supposed to be fun, and I want to show you that, you know, you can have fun with freehand, and just to kind of, yeah, let go a little bit like I did and not get too stressed about making it perfect. Just have a freehand on there, retro colors, the yellow is awesome, and it'll be fun. It'll look fun. I could see my mistakes where the proportions weren't quite right and it wasn't matching the source material exactly. But yeah, I just did a decent job. I would kind of try to do a neat job. I'd make a mistake, I'd fix the mistake, then I'd make a mistake again. And I went around this a few times up to a point. So, you know, I had a good go. I tried to do a pretty decent job of how sharp it was, but if I couldn't get it razor sharp, I just moved on to the next part, and this was very freeing and enjoyable. Yeah, I definitely want to do some more of this. I did some shading and highlighting, but nothing crazy. Like I started to build up some white onto the wings, and I thought this is going to get, you know, chunky and bumpy and not look so good. I quite like how flat and clean it's looking, so I did a few highlights with some ivory mixed in and just left it there. And I did the same highlighting for the red that I did on the model, and yeah, just a few black highlights to define the shield. So yeah, I didn't go nuts on it. You can do what you want, but I think the important thing is just to have the design on here, and it's an homage at the end of the day. It's just supposed to represent that old school thing. I think I almost had a smile on my face when I glued this on. It was quite a good feeling, and when I was looking really up close to the banner and trying to neaten it up, I was thinking, oh, I don't think it looks very good. But as soon as I took a step back, looked far away, and I glued it on the model, I kind of forgot about those mistakes, and I just looked at the overall model, the overall feeling, and yeah, it gave me joy. I thought, that's cool. It's so old school. Look at it. And that's the point, really. And I really think that I'd quite like to do a retro army. Maybe Blood Angels, but maybe Ultramarines. I don't know. I'm tempted. So eBay is looking pretty scary at the moment for retro models. But if you have any Devastator squads, Assault squads, those metal ones, and you want to see them painted on the channel, then get in touch, because I will definitely paint those guys. But yeah, I just finished with a few tufts. I thought these brown ones would be pretty cool. And here you go. This is the finished retro Chaplain. And yeah, really cool to see it side by side, the modern one. And yeah, I think the new Lamarte's model is fantastic. I only converted it for the sake of it, really. It didn't need converting. The pose is awesome. But yeah, really cool to paint these side by side. I absolutely love both. I would love to have a modern 40k army in the style that I've done this one, and I'd also love a retro army with this metal one. You know, I think old stuff is cool, and I'm embracing the new stuff as well. So this has been a nice experience for me. It's been fun, and I hope watching the video has been fun too. Just seeing some old stuff painted in a kind of modern style. I don't know. So I'm looking forward to reading your comments. Let me know what you think of retro Marines in general, and let me know if you want to see more retro stuff, because I'm really happy to do it here on YouTube. If you guys want to see it, I will definitely do an old Devastator squad. I absolutely love the sergeant with the fist in the air. He is super cool. So yeah, let me know what you think, and please check us out on Patreon. I'm there all the time doing tutorials. So if you want to see more from me, then definitely go check out the Patreon. And I'm looking forward to the next retro project. See you then.